Okay, so first let's fix a couple of bugs with our first implementation. What are the bugs? Are at least two. One is when I add an answer, I'm adding something to the list, and we know that, let's go back to the components, and in app we see that our new answer has been added, but this is incomplete. So for example, the last answer has date, email, ID undefined. Why is this a problem? Well, it's a problem for React, and it's a problem for the management of the data, of course, something without an ID. We are using in the answer table component, here we are using the ID of the answer as the key for the row. Okay? And so the key for the row should be always, when we have a list, we learned that React requires every item on the list to have a unique key. So to have a key, so not undefined, and have it different. And so this prevents some, let's say, optimizations inside React, or especially it may create some confusion if we have similar elements and React doesn't know which ones, if you are trying to swap them or delete them. But this was just a minor, let's say, problem. We saw a warning in the console saying, okay, you have now an element without a key. So let me reload the application. Allora, if I say the text buggy and me whatever, I get this warning. Each child in a list should have a unique key prop. Okay, always check for this kind of error, because it's easy to correct, and it creates problem if you don't, because then in the interaction, not in this simple example, but in more complex interaction, you may keep track of which element is which. Okay, but the larger problem is here is if I'm adding more than one element, they all fall with the same ID, and so they break the behavior. For example, with what app I'm remember the map will check more than one element and increase the score of more than one element, and the same the filter for deletion. You try to delete one, it will delete both. So actually, no, we should solve it, at least for being able to play with the application. The real solution would be that the ID is assigned by the server when it inserts the new data into the database. Okay, we don't have a server yet, so we try to create our own IDs manually when we create it. So we have this set answers, okay, which needs to become more complex, because it needs first of all to fill the answer object before adding it to the list, to fill it with some extra information. So it's not just so easy. We need to just in our callback to return the statement, but in the same time compute a new ID. Okay, the new ID could be the maximum element of the current IDs plus one, right? For example. So the new ID could be the maximum math.max for the list of IDs of the current elements. Okay, so the previous answers dot map answer into its ID plus one. Always be aware that we are doing this operation inside the callback, not inside the add answer function, because we must be sure that if people are adding like crazy new elements, we always check compute the maximum out of the latest version of the state. Okay, and so in this case we should take the answer object and modify the ID with ID equal new ID. Maybe this is working. And let's see if it helps with the application. So like this, let me okay, something is still wrong. What did they wrong? Let me check the state. State here. Not a number. Nice, nice. So what's wrong with me here? A is the answers, previous answers, plus 1. Sorry, let me just debug it in this way. Ten, 11, okay, sorry. Let's start from the beginning because I 10, 11 is the array of numbers, right? Ah, sorry. Because Max doesn't want an array, but it wants a list of numbers, so we need to spread the array. Right? So the browser, restart to get rid of the bad one. Okay. It's the strange behavior of Max that doesn't accept a collection by itself, but it accepts a set of numbers, so we need to spread the collection. And now they are working. Other items, they are totally independent, of course, and can be deleted separately from each other. Okay, so we just fixed it by creating a locally unique ID, just by getting the best one, the highest one, increasing by one. So create a new local unique ID. Not needed when we have a database. Later on when we connect the server with the client. Okay. So much for adding. Okay, what we should also do is after submission we should clear the form, probably, not leave it like here. It was useful for me because I submitted more than once, but for playing, but normally after submission we should have a cleaner form of the state of the form, but it's also that's easy. We do it here, and we set the state again the text again to empty, and the email again to empty. And so after submission, the form will be empty again, so we can start writing something more. The user will look like a new form, and the old values being added. Of course, it depends. We could also at that point write a confirmation message, whatever we want. Okay. In all the work, actually, the logic is inside the submit answer callback that will manage the validation and the updating on the model or the data model, so creating the objects, setting it, and updating on the user interface after successful submission. Okay. And this was for adding. The more, as I mentioned before, the more complex operation is editing. What does it mean, editing? It means when the user clicks on one of these edit icons, we should take the data from this and populate the form with those data. Let the user change them, and let the user save the modification. So we should have a similar form to this one, which is not initialized with an empty value, but it should be initialized with something coming from a given element. So since most of the validation logic and so on is the same, we could imagine having, say, evolving this add answer form and transforming it into an add or edit answer form that, depending on the different mode of operation, should manage the addition or the creation of a new element or the modification of a current one. Just not to create two different components that share 90% of the behavior. Okay, so let me do a cut and paste of this component just to have it saved. Okay, and modify with the, so cut and paste. The new one now is called add edit answer form. And we imagine that we can have a new property, so it can mode, that could be, the mode it could be edit, add, or it could be edit, and then the form will update its behavior accordingly. Okay, so for example, if this is a property, okay, so for example in the text it's not add new answer, but could be if mode is add, then of course add new answer, otherwise, sorry, question mark, otherwise edit current answer. We can have some, not mod, but props.mod. What are you doing? Props.mod. Something like that. We may customize the submission button. Could be add answer, mod props.mod equal to add. If so, then add answer. And otherwise, I write in a different way with using ends and the other case with the ternary operator. It's edit, save, modifications, edits. So we can customize parts of the interface, and the form should know in which mode it's called, it's activated. So for example, we are calling that in so our we go above where we are calling this component. It was answer displays here, add answer form. Let's change it to add edit answer form. Okay, right now it should have the, so I just used the new component, which should be behaving the same as before. Okay, should be the same as before. Well, not really. Okay, because I need to provide a mode, for example, equal to add. Okay, so in this case it's behaving as before, add new answer, we put a text, we put an email, and we have the add answer component, and it behaves like before. If, for example, we modify with edit, it will render a bit differently, edit current answer, save edits. Okay, so we are just customizing it. It's a component with a parameter, the property that decides how it will behave. Of course, it's not something that we can write here in the code. It's a behavior of the whole page. This page should be in insert mode or in edit mode. So when the user clicks here in one of these icons, the form below should switch to edit mode, right? And who knows? So again, it's a property of a component that decides how it behaves, decided by another component, this icon. This means that this mode operation is actually a local state to be managed by this answers display component. So this component, which is creating the table and creating the form, knows whether to create them in edit mode or in insert mode, for example. So it means we may have a mode state that defaults to add. And when the user clicks on the edit button, we change the state to edit so that the form will update itself. So the mode is not edit or, but it takes from the mode variable. So right now it's still working with add. If we put if we click on this, the first thing to do will be to switch the mode variable. Okay, that's the easy part. For doing that, we should allow the button to change the state. So we should define a function switch to edit. So that is it's a very simple callback called set mode edit. I just gave a fancy name to a stupid operation. But this is a property that must be given to the answer row. And the answer row should give it to the button. And finally, the button, the answer action buttons, finally can have an on-click event that, for the moment, could just be a callback for calling these props switch to edit. This is just one first step. So when I click on any of these buttons, we see the form that changes below. Okay, that's easy. we need also to go back. So maybe we had a cancel button there. Say, okay, don't modify it anymore. So we can go back to the add mode, to the initial mode. Okay, this way is not very friendly. It's not the way I would design a user interface for adding something. Okay, but it's just for understanding the mechanism of interaction of the different components when we have different levels of state that are intersecting. So let's add a cancel button. There's no cancel. And then we should have an on-click again on this button that will call some pros.switch to add, for example. That needs to be created and passed down, and okay, you know the story. So we have this switch to add. Can be done in many ways. I don't really like having strings as mode, but sorry? Switch to add, right? When you call the function inside the button. Okay, I will go there. Since I'm propagating. Okay, and this is added in answer form. Yep. Okay, so it should be something like this. We start in add mode, we go to edit, and then we cancel, go back to add, or something like that. Okay, just for switching the different mode. Okay, now we have two problems. One is when we click here, I would like to initialize this form in this way. So one idea could be to work with the default value of the state. So now the default value is empty. We could work by setting it with a previous value of an answer object. So actually, when I click on the edit icon, I know which answer I want to edit. So I could give this information to this component and say, okay, let's edit this one. Okay, so in the edit mode, we have an extra argument, props dot how do we call it? I don't want to call it answer because editing. That is the current value of the answer to be edited. So what we could do is that if we have a props.editing, if it's defined, the thing, if it's defined, then we can use props editing text, otherwise the empty string. So when we initialize the form, we can initialize either with the value of a actual answer, or and the same can be done below. Instead of text, we have email. This could be an idea. It doesn't work, and we see why. Okay, of course, it means that props.editing should be set by someone. Who can set this? The father component. So we need a state in the father component that stores the answer that we want to edit. And it's also useful in the future because this answer will also remember the ID of what we are editing. Because the ID is not shown, but we need to have it if we want to update successfully the right row. So it's nice to have a reference to what we are currently editing. Okay? The form can't store the information by itself, it can only receive it from outside, so the storage is on the father component. And the father component, again, is answers display. And initially, we don't have anything to edit. And we have this state that, of course, we pass down to the form. Editing equal to editing. So that the form knows what we are editing. Okay? So right now, again, nothing changes. But when we click on this button, we should update the editing state. And how can we do that? Okay, we already have the right place. We have switch to edit, and so we can force the switch to edit function to require an answer object. We edit what? Edit this answer. So I can have an answer here, object, and as I set mode to edit, I also set editing to answer. That's easy. And it's the answer that I clicked on. Of course, I need to also modify the callback to pass this information. That's easy. We go back again to the button. And switch to edit needs to provide props.answers. Okay? And let's be sure, also in the form, where is the real form, add edit, when the message says add new answer or edit current answer, let's stick the ID number, for example. props.editing.id. So we see. So it died? No. So if I click on this button, I see edit current answer number 10. Fine. I click on the other one, edit current answer number 11. And I can play all the day long. Can go back to add or whatever. The only problem is that these fields are not populating, are not loading themselves. Why? So props.editing is being updated. I see it here. Let's go to the component, this component here, add edit answer form. Look at the props. Editing, ID 10, and we have the email, we have the text, we have everything. If I click there, this prop is updated. So the component knows the props. And this is an example of a common bug where we initialize a component state from a property. So we have use state that initializes the state not with a constant but with a prop of the component. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is with the word initializing. This operation is only done once for each component. That means that if the props later change, and they do change, we saw they changing, the state is not reinitialized again. There would be no reason. So I'm creating the form component, okay? I'm initializing the state. The state depends on the value of the props at that time, when the component is created. That it's empty because by default is an add, okay? So the first time it initializes with the default value of an empty string, and that's fine. Then the props change. The change of the property is propagated into the component we saw in the title, changing the numbers, but there's nothing that will recreate or re-execute this instruction here. Even if it's at the beginning of the function, it's only evaluated the first time the component is created. So initializing a state from a property doesn't track the changes of the properties. What we should tell React is that, yes, it's the same component, but reinitialize it from scratch, please. I should tell React it's not the same component. It's a different instance of the same component class. Like, I have a form. I don't want just to change the property of this form. Please, React, create another form with different properties and forget about the old one. One easy way to do that would be to destroy and recreate the component. If we didn't have the component always visible here, if we have a button for showing or hiding the component, that would happen automatically, because when you hide the component is destroyed. The local variables are lost. When you show it again, it will be recreated. But since this component is always showing, React will try to maintain as much as possible the previous values. Okay? What's the trick? Telling React that the component changed. And this trick is based on the key attribute. The key is sort of an ID of a component. So if you have the same component, but you change the key, React understands that it's actually another one, not the previous one. And so we'll destroy the previous one and recreate a new one. Let's try this trick. When I populate or instantiate the add, edit, answer forms, I should, where's that? No, at the beginning, answer display here. I should provide a key. If the key is could be editing.id, then the key would track the current ID of the answer, and by updating the key, I'm asking React to recreate the component. There's the problem when editing.id doesn't exist in add mode, so let's fix that in a moment. Yeah. So let's reload it. And of course, I have editing is undefined. What are you saying, undefined? Ah, yes, it's undefined, so ID cannot be called. So let me. It can be an empty object, not undefined. And .text is not defined. Why are you trying to use .text? Sorry. Yes, because it's trying to initialize it for, because editing now exists. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm trying to think the best way of doing that. Either I create a fake editing object so that it can be used, or actually I would prefer going back to the first undefined and try to saying that the key is if editing is defined, then give the ID, otherwise give -1. Let's see. Let's reload. Okay, don't have any visible errors. If I click on add here, we see that not only the title changed, but also the text is being initialized. And then we can, of course, modify it. If I click on the other one, so every time I click on the different button, it will copy the content of the relevant, because it's reinitializing the components, so it's creating a state by taking the values of the new properties. If I go on cancel, it doesn't, because I'm not cleaning. So when I go on in cancel, I should again also set mode to add, and at the same time set editing to undefined, so that when I go back to add, I will reinitialize without any predefined values, like that. It's painful, okay, because we need to understand the different possibilities, different states, and the different actions of the user. Then, okay, also for the user point of view, it can be quite inconvenient if I start typing something and then by mistake I click on the icon and it overrides something that I'm writing. So it may be that when I'm editing something, I should disable the other buttons so that the user should be forced to cancel and return. But okay, there's a lot of details that can be set depending on this mode variable. But one of the reasons I wanted to show this is that the usage of the key attribute whenever you need to reinitialize a component and reinitialize the state. So either the state is initialized with constants, or if it's initialized with properties, either these properties don't change, but if they change and they want to change the tracker, we should also change the key value of the component itself. Otherwise, you will end up debugging because you see the property changes, you don't see the state. And when you reload, you see the new state, but not the old one, and so on. Okay, at that point, we are reusing all the logic of the form, right? But at the end, we should not add a new element, but update a current one. So at the end of this, in the submission method here, submit answer. Right now, let me remove some of these blocks. Instead of add answer, I should call update answer. Okay, so of course, and also the creation of the new answer is different, because right now we really have an answer object that we are editing that already has the ID, all the other properties. So here, okay, let's check if we are in the submission and mode was add, then we do this. Props.mode, yes. Then we do this, what we did before. Maybe the validation should be before. Yeah. So everything is okay. We add this answer. Otherwise, if props.mode was edit, we do something different. New answer would be the old answer object, see props.answer, .editing. Okay, we copy the properties of editing, plus we overwrite the text and the email, for example. Okay, text is text, email is email. And then we can decide whether we want to keep the date or to update the current date. It's a logic decision. If I'm editing something, does the date stay the same, or should we update it to the current one? Let's imagine we want to, so we just, no, and if I change the answer, does the score remain intact, or should I force it to 0? Okay, you can open any possibilities. Right now, let's say we just modify these two fields, but here we can decide actually how is the object recreated, and the props. Of course, we need to call a different handler, edit answer, new answer. Okay, edit answer, define it up and propagate it down. Edit answer. So by going up, const edit answer, that takes an answer and does stuff. And this edit answer should be propagated down answer display down to here. And then we are in the form, and it should be there. Okay, let's try if I forgot anything. So let's reload to have it clean. Let's see if adding is working. New one, new.com. Okay, then I try to modify the second one. I give some points just to have different numbers. I edit, it crashes, no more, not crash. Save, edits, it didn't work. It didn't work. So let's see why. So let me check if there are no errors in the console. So I forgot something. Let's see the submission button. Ah, no. Okay, sorry. I was ahead with my mind. Okay, let's see if we get here at least. Okay, edit this one. Okay, at least we get the object with the new text, and okay. So we just need to do it to update the state. Okay, updating the state is basically the same as doing a map, by replacing the state with the new state that in most of the cases will replicate the old one, but in the current one will replace it. Okay, so set answers, call back previous answers, becomes previous answers dot map map an answer A into, let's see if the a.id is different from the answer.id. So answer is what you get as a parameter coming from the form. A is what we are iterating over. So if the two ideas are different, let's replicate A. Otherwise, ans. Again, sorry, I hate the ternary operator so much that I always get it wrong. But in these one-liners, it's useful. So now, he should try to go here. Yeah. Any updates? I can. Oh, now there's still a small bug because when I save the edits, the form still says editing number 11. I should revert it back into add new form. So just something that I need to do after I call the edit answers. I need to to switch back to the previous mode, and it's the same that I do with the cancel button. This one, which to add. So I can go back to add either by canceling or by submitting. Let's see, I added the first one. Okay, double question mark, change address, and it's not a function. Thank you. It's in a different component. Yeah, because switch to add is in the, no, is switch to add here. Is not a function in 142 here. Sorry, it was here. So the component is edit answer, add edit answer form. I deleted the S for some reason. It became a witch. So yeah. Okay, so little by little we try to put together different pieces to have and try to solve the issues that came out along the way. Just to recap, we now have the concept of a control component. Now we did that in a very basic way, where every input element has its own state, okay, and is updated separately. Of course, we could put all the elements in a form into an object that takes all the fields, all the properties of the form. And of course, it will be easier because we don't need to have a set text, set email, set date, and all the different callbacks. Just one callback that will update the object itself. Okay. Especially if we don't have to do any special, let's say, management depending on the type of fields. Second point is that we have the concept of local state. We have a local state for managing the form, for controlling the form here. We also have a local state for changing the behavior of the page. I mean local state because it's nothing permanent, it's nothing that gets saved. It's just used for controlling the user interface, for controlling the behavior of some parts of the user interface. So it's only available in one component, and the ones near to it that really need this kind of information. While answers and questions are, let's say, application state. Let's keep the different separate. Okay, one is just for managing some interaction behavior, and the other for managing the data. Let's not mix the two. Editing is actually an object of type answer, but its purpose is not to store some value, but it's just to collect it while the user is interacting. Okay. We saw how painful it is to pass down the properties, because every time you need to do something more, you need to have an event handler to call it here, define it there, and define the state somewhere else, and pass all through all the levels. Now we did it because we were working incrementally. Okay, so every time we came up with a new function, and we had to define it in the proper place and pass it down to the proper component. Another trick we can use in this case to make it simpler is sort of to make a composite object. So we define the callbacks, and then we define a composite object like, for example, actions, answer, actions, and that collects edit answer, add answer, and so on. Was vote up vote, sorry, and what is delete answer, like that. We put them into one object, and we pass the object down. So we pass only one object called actions, for example, and to all the components, and then the component can have action dot or upvote, action dot, without passing every single property. We know that they are going to different components, but maybe it's easier to pull all the main actions together and then pass them. Okay, this is the block of action that you need to edit the answer list, for example. Okay, so we can group them in this case. And the other trick is also spreading the properties along the tree of the components. So if we have a component that needs to replicate most of its property to its children, like we did, for example, in the answer row, for example, had to copy a lot of its property to its children. The answer equal prop the answer, and so on. Okay, all of these are, this is new. Okay, it's proper, but these are just passed over. So we could use the spreading operator for passing down all the operator for the father, no? Like, and it will be something like props. Means copy all the properties, key and value, the same that we have, to my child. We may like it or not, because in this case we are propagating everything. Okay, we are replicating everything, also some properties that are really not needed in the children, except the key. The key is not propagated because it's treated, it's not a real part of the props. It's not being passed to the children normally. But if you have a lot of properties that you try to pass down, this could be an easy trick. Okay. So basically, the main point is try to make it easier. No? Let's put the actions in a state variables into an object. Let's put all the actions into one object. Let's propagate all the property as a block. They make this work a little bit easier, because if we add some property at the top level, it will automatically be propagated through the different keys of props. The risk is that we have components down below that receive a lot of properties that they really don't need. Okay, so it makes debugging more difficult, because they may call some function that they should not be intended to. It's a matter of balancing. Okay, I think that the four main operations, so create, edit, delete, and remove, are similar to, let's say, a big deal of possibilities of applications, and the reasoning part, the thinking pattern is more or less the same. Now we have an add mode and edit mode. In other cases, we may have one page for adding, another for editing. So we still don't know how to navigate from page to page. We'll see next week when we learn the React router. So to have different pages appear in the same application, and they can show different parts of the interfaces. Now we are just doing that in a very manual way by setting a flag, that will display or not display a part of the page, but it's not a real solution. Okay, so we need to move on. So on one end, we will next week have a look at the uncontrolled forms, so how they behave, so that we have both possibilities, and see how to create application on many pages, and prepare, of course, the next steps would be here, moving the data model from the client to the server. They will be the step later, because right now we are just editing some local data. It's clean, it's in state, it's well propagated, it's well, but when I load the application, I'm losing everything. And if we are following this pattern here, we have actually these 4 functions. We just need to modify these functions, and all the rest in the application will still work. Because every component down there is just asking up, please update the state in this way. Whether the state is local or whether the state is remote is just a problem of this app component, not of the rest of the application in this case. So we are isolating the data model so that we can then decide where we store it and how we update it. So, but that's all for next week, while this week we're still having fun with forms. Okay? So we are 10 minutes ahead, so I think it's a good time to stop. Okay? Thank you. Let me save everything. I hope I'm not saving any bugs.